Okay, so I'm John Cezanne with the Olympia Indivisible endorsement team, and I want to welcome everybody to Olympia Indivisible's Meet the Candidates virtual town hall. Thanks for being here. The Olympia Indivisible endorsement team hopes that the Meet the Candidate events will help you to make an informed decision when it comes time for the endorsement vote. In the next month, we'll be sending a ballot to each of our over 600 Olympia Indivisible members to vote for the candidates that they want Indivisible to endorse. For those who couldn't attend the live event or miss any part of it, we'll be recording it and posting it on the Indivisible website. Additionally, the Indivisible endorsement team will present an evaluation of the candidates at an all-member meeting to be held just prior to the endorsement vote at a date to be determined in mid-June. Over the next few weeks, we'll be talking with 4 candidates that will be running for the Port of Olympia Commissioner. In District 3, Melissa Denton, Amy Evans, and Joel Hansen will face off in the top 2 August primary to determine who will be on the general election ballot in November to replace retiring Commissioner Zeta. Currently, Jesse Simmons is the only declared candidate in District 2 in the District 2 race. We still have a little more than half a week to go. See if anybody else jumps in. But right now, he's the only one, and he will be running to replace Commissioner McGregor. Today, we have Melissa Denton as our guest. You may be somewhat familiar with Melissa because she ran for County Commissioner in 2018. She's also been a resident of Thurston County for 33 years and has been an active volunteer in several nonprofit organizations. We applaud Ms. Denton, as we do all the candidates, for their willingness to put themselves on the line to serve all of us and all the people of the county. So Melissa, I'll hand it over to you. Please take about 10 minutes or so to tell us about yourself and why you want to serve on the Port Commission. And then we will open it up for about 30 minutes of Q&A. We have several questions that were pre-submitted, but any of you in the audience who have a question can put it in the chat. Please put the letter Q in front of your question so I'll know it's a question. And with that, I think we got it all covered. So I'll let Melissa take it over. It's all yours.
Great. Well, first, I want you to know a little bit about me. And I think that when I'm looking at hiring someone, which is what voting for someone, electing them is, and even more so in your shoes, you are using your civic responsibility and your love for your community to participate in or watch this event. It is really important to know kind of why is this person wanting this job? And I think that's the first thing I always wonder whenever I consider a candidate. What are they up to? What's their agenda? And I want you to know what my agenda is. I am a citizen servant. I want to make our community better. I want to help the people of Thurston County. The reason I want to do this is because I really enjoy doing that. I also really love having the satisfaction of having accomplished things that make things better for other people. I do that in my work as a family law attorney, representing people and helping people through really terrible, tough times. And I really get a lot of satisfaction from that. And I know in my times that I've been in leadership in lots of organizations, I find it very satisfying to help more than one person at a time. And I believe that as a port commissioner, it is an ideal fit for my knowledge, experience, background, and interests for me to do this work and help shepherd the Port of Olympia into the next era, because we have a future before us, and it's up to us if we reach out and grab it and make it happen, or if we just react to things. And I plan to be part of thinking ahead, part of reacting gracefully and kindly, and trying to make our community better off. And the way you can do that is economic development. And I mean, there's lots of ways, and other kinds of government do lots of different kinds of things, but the port is about economic development of our community. And that is so important, so vital, especially for people who have less, people who don't have enough resources. They need help, and they need some of that economic development pointed their way. The way to get people better economic development is to make good paying jobs happen. And that is a lot of what the port already does. The port has a direct influence on a lot of jobs, even at the port, but also in our larger community. And a lot of the decisions made at the port have a big impact already. I think we can do even better at that, and that we need to be aiming for really good paying jobs, not just jobs that barely make it. But we also need to make sure that those jobs are compatible with our future. And that future needs to be a clean and green future. We need to have a future where we have air to breathe, where we have water to drink. One of my staff people moved out of state when we went to working virtually, and he's in another state where they have pretty bad air. And it's so easy for us to take these things for granted, the absolute gorgeousness of our environment here, our beautiful air, and our relatively very clean and wonderful water. We can't take it for granted. And the port has a major role in protecting those resources as we foster economic growth. And we can take the initiative and do that and move towards a future that is clean and green. I also really want to focus on communication and process. Very boring lawyer thing, but the way we do things matters a great deal. We need to do things in a way that is compatible with working well with other kinds of governmental entities, with respecting our neighbors and our participants. We need our tribes to be on board and treated with respect. We need our local jurisdictions. We need our community in cooperation with us, and even the folks who are in unincorporated areas who aren't just represented by one of our cities. And we do have more than one city in this town. I live in Tumwater, but there are, Olympia is right in the heart of where our water port is, and it's very important, and part of my district is in West Olympia. So I'm not denigrating Olympia, but we need to make sure that we reach out to more than just those who are already really closely involved. We want to reach out. And I feel like being a teacher, being a communicator with people, especially about difficult subjects, difficult parts of what they're upset about the port, is something that I can really do well and help facilitate people having input into what happens with our port. And I'm not going to get into too much more in the way of specifics, because I'm sure some of your questions are going to be really about interesting things that I really care about. But I do want to take just a moment to thank you. You are using your very gorgeous, wonderful day to spend time being very concerned and involved individuals who are paying attention to what's good for our community. I'm running for office, and it's not uncommon for people to thank me for doing that. Even if they don't really want to vote for me or like me, a lot of people respect that someone is going out of their way to try and serve our community. But you are serving our community. If you're watching this video, you're serving our community, because it is a big step to take your time, whether it's on this beautiful day that this is happening live, or your time if it's the dark of night, whenever you're trying to figure out who to vote for. It's a really big thing that you are taking the time to care enough and listen and participate. So I want to make sure I thank you for participating and caring. This is an off-year election, and by golly, we got to make people still care about elections. We got to make people care about their local government, because you can't just get involved every 4 years and you'll end up with things like what we just had for the last 4 years for presidency. We need legitimate government, and legitimate government starts at home with us. So thank you for participating and being here. That's all I have to say right now. It might not be a 10 whole minutes, but it's what I want to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So the first question, can you tell us what has been your involvement with the port to date?
Good question. I mentioned that I'm a citizen servant. I don't have my personal axe to grind. I'm learning a ton about the port, and I've been involved with the port, and I'll tell you about how, but I do want to point out that I am not here to further my own personal agenda of what I want to force down everybody else's throat because it's what I want for me or for mine. I'm here to be a citizen servant, learn everything, and make really good decisions at the time I make the decisions for the port, on behalf of the port, with the port. So my background with the port is as a citizen of this area for over the longer time. I've just been a person who would go to port activities, would enjoy the port property, go to the farmer's market when it was donated by the port. There's so many ways that the port touches my life. And now that I'm running for this office, I'm learning more and more amazing things that our port does. And I'm so excited to be learning these things. I've been, when I was on the board of League of Women Voters, I went on a tour, or maybe it was right before I went on the board of the league. But anyway, I went on a tour of the port. So that was very interesting and educational, and I really enjoyed it. I have been to all the port meetings probably this year. I've been to a lot of the port meetings, but it's of course virtual and listening in. I haven't been to every one of them, but I've been to most of them. I have been to one or two POCAC meetings, but I didn't stay through the whole thing, I will confess, because they work on really technical details that I have to run for office. So I can't spend all of my time that I would like participating or listening in POCAC. I've learned from people who are current port commissioners. I've talked with them. I haven't gotten to talk to Mr. McGregor, Commissioner McGregor yet, but I have had multiple conversations with Joe Downing and with Zita. So I feel like I'm learning a ton from them. I know a lot of people who know a lot about the port, and I'm learning from them, people who've run for the port, people who are very interested in it. So I'm educating myself, but I don't have a personal vested interest. I haven't worked at the port for many years. I just have a background of really being a caring citizen and somebody who's really good at being a lawyer and a knowledgeable person and a good decision maker.
Okay. So in response to the question about the port's real estate holdings, you stated that this was one of the areas that you were most excited about and interested in changing the port's direction. Could you tell us a little bit more about your vision for utilizing the port's real estate in a more productive way?
Sure, I'd love to. There's a couple of things that I've noticed about the port that a lot of people, I haven't heard other people really talking about that much, but that I find that have tweaked my interest and make me really think that maybe there's some room for change. And like I said in my answer, I don't think I'm the only person in the universe who has an opinion, and some of my knowledge may be limited. So I don't know the answer to the questions, but I've got the questions. I toured the property. I've driven around the property myself in Tumwater quite a bit because that's a really hot issue, the Panattoni deal. And I have noticed, I also went on a tour of that area with Pete Kmet, and he was kind enough to offer, and I accepted an opportunity to go and look at the property there. It's not that he was favoring me necessarily. He would give that to another commissioner candidate, I'm sure, but he showed me his vision for what he saw as things that would be desirable, and showed me, again, because geography is not my strongest point, he was showing me which parts were port property and which parts adjoining were serving which functions and stuff. So it was very helpful. Took a couple of hours. I noticed a lot of things about that property. One of the things I noticed was the parts that have pretty good sized trees. I think probably the oldest stands of trees that I saw were probably around maybe 50, 60 years old. They're not old growth, but they are legitimate, real stands of trees that have some beauty and some potential to be good urban forest and something that maybe could be saved. I didn't see the kind of trees, but maybe I just didn't see them, and they're there, that are like what we saved whenever I was on the Planning Commission for Tumwater. We were real concerned about the trees that are outside of where Fred Meyer is, or the old Tyee. I remember those trees, and We managed to keep some stands of trees over in that area. And that's the kind of thing that I really think we need to make sure and protect when decisions are being made about how to use the property, both the part that Panattoni has a lease option on and the other parts of the port property. The thing I noticed the most, though, was how much of that land is lying fallow. That we could have that land developed into something that creates good paying jobs in our community and hopefully things that contribute to our green economy, where we can have jobs that don't necessarily generate a lot of pollution, that don't do anything negative to our environment, that actually help. We have the potential for that. We have some of those industries going strong in this community, and I would like for us to have more and recruit more. There may be opportunities to invest and build structures, kind of like in the Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of, but I have a lot of work to do, and I'll be one of 3 commissioners. So I'm not going to make decisions by myself in these things, but I think that there's potential.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just going to follow up on what you were saying about the Tumwater property. So sounds like you're a little bit dubious about building a big warehouse there.
Well, I talked with Pete quite a bit, and there are a lot of different options and ways to do things. One of the things he and I were talking about was that sometimes you can have a warehouse and it's multi-story, and then you're not taking up huge amounts of land. One of our problems here is that compared to Seattle, our land is cheap. Oh my gosh, it doesn't feel very cheap, does it, if you're buying a house? But that's a problem because the big boys, the people who have tons of money and invest in these things and just slam in and get their money and go, those folks have an invested interest in buying that cheap land and using it how they want to use it. We need to be mindful about how we do that. So you could have a lot of square footage in a warehouse, and there are some pretty attractive warehouses that Pete showed me, but it needs to be taking into consideration that we don't want to use up all of our land on a giant building or 2, and then not be able to have any physical environment left. That plus this parking lots is difficult. I can't control that by myself, and I need to have more studying on the contract before I can be really sure of how to work on that. But I think that there's room to negotiate.
Okay. So let's move on to a different topic here.
Sure.
In your written response to a question on the questionnaire that dealt with the large operating losses at the marine terminal, which was 1.8 million in 2020, you said there are many different ways to measure loss. This is a quote from you. The marine terminal brings many benefits to our community that would be terrible to lose. The port's mission is to improve the economy of Thurston County. I do not measure success in reaching a goal by viewing profit loss statements of parts of the port's operations, unquote. Could you explain what are the benefits from the terminal operations that would mitigate the cost to the taxpayers? Why do you see the terminal operations to be a net benefit to the community?
Okay, well, I've learned more about it since I filled out that questionnaire, and I don't say that I know all the answers. I'm not a bookkeeper or a spreadsheet studier. I'm a big picture guy, but I have learned some things. And what I understand is that the actual operating costs of the port are covered by the income of the port. It's the depreciation and the capital expenditure expenses that run that budget over. So it's not the actual operations of it. Now, depreciation, it's something that we use in taxes. It's something that I've worked with in my practice with my company, all my clients who have businesses and my own business. I'm familiar with it, but it is a kind of an artificial loss. It is something that you don't have cashola going out the door. You have a loss that you count on your books, but it's not that that object is gone or that it's degraded so you can't use it or that it costs you real money. It's just that there's a process for seeing this thing is getting older and it's therefore worth less money. The other thing that we have are some decisions that were made by commissions that were before the current one, not the current folks at all. But there were some decisions made about buying things. For instance, that crane. Crane probably needs to go bye-bye. It doesn't bring in money. It costs a lot. I think there's a lot of agreement on that. I don't think anybody's really going to argue the other way. So there are things that can be done to improve. But I also want to point out that when you have a grocery, I'm going to tell you a grocery store story real quick. If you have a grocery store and you put something on sale like soda pops, and it's called a loss leader, and you get people in the store and you get other benefits from in the surrounding area, and they buy a lot of other stuff when they're in the store. But if you say, oh, we're studying this store and here's the loss leader, and guess what, that part's losing money, let's ditch that. It's a whole package what we have as the port. It's not only the water port. We have the land, we have the airport, we have the other things that we do with a lot of communities and a lot of activities in our community. And that is only one part of our port. So I'm not willing to slice and dice and throw that particular part away right now. I don't think it's just a separate unit. I don't think that we're losing a bunch of tax money. I understand that government costs money. It's government. And we get a lot of benefit from the port, economic debt benefit in many, many ways in our community. And it does cost some tax dollars to get that. I hope that we can reduce those taxes in the future, but I don't think that we need to throw that away. It's also our heritage. We've had a working waterfront for like 200 years here, including back whenever the natives were working that waterfront. I think we should keep it.
Okay, well, yeah, it has been there a while, that's for sure. I don't think I understand quite what the benefits are, though, specifically more, how does it, I don't understand exactly.
Okay, there are jobs.
The crew.
There are very good jobs, and those jobs bring money into our community. It also gives us the cachet of being a deep water port. It keeps us set for the future where we can have that ability depending on how things change. If we throw that away, it's something that we have. If we throw that away, it's not so easy to reconstruct it and restart it and have something else. So I don't see that as necessarily the answer. I don't throw babies out with the bathwater. I try and improve the baby and do what I can to make the baby worth having around. And I think it's a really valuable part of our community. There are the jobs that are connected to transporting the people who eat food who come in through there. If we get tourist things in through there, if we get a ferry through there, there's a lot of potential. And I don't think it's time to get rid of it at this time.
Okay. So getting back to, well, let's see, we talked about Panettone, so I'm going to move on. What are your views concerning the removal of the Fifth Avenue Dam in order to restore the Deschutes River estuary?
I've been thinking and hearing a lot about that. Of course, for many years, most of us have. I remember some of the old studies that came out, and I had it on my waiting room table in my law office for people to read about it. I know it's still being studied. I have been to the port meetings. There's the studies coming out next month. The preliminary one, the final one, is going to come out a year from now when I'm hopefully a port commissioner and able to help formulate the final response of the port to it. So that's a decision. That's a very big decision. That's a big responsibility to make, and not one that I'm making right now. But I will tell you that something I'm really intrigued by as an opportunity is dredging. I think that a lot of the folks who don't want the dam removed are very concerned about the huge amount of sediment that will go if and when the dam is gone. It's going to flow out into Puget Sound. And if those folks have a legitimate reason to be fearful about that, it will really affect them, but it will also really affect all of us. If that is not dredged, if it's not taken care of, then all of us suffer. All of it. I mean, do we want to just have a big pile of mud instead of a South Puget Sound? I don't think any of us want that. So we need to work together on this, and we need to have plans for if that does go, then how do we deal with it? It's my understanding that dredging in the past has been done by the different individual entities, about 5 different individual entities: the city, the port, Tom's Outboard, the yacht club, and I think one other organization. They had 5 different permits. They had 5 different contracts. There's a lot of overhead and administration involved with having done it that way. What I would like to do is, the port being the big player, and just as somebody who is willing to help contribute and communicate, I would like for there to be cooperation between these entities. And I will also say that if I've heard recently that the state has, of course, a huge ownership and involvement in this. So hopefully the state of Washington would help with the cost, but there needs to be contribution to the cost so that this dredging is not something that only a few people have to pay for. If this change that is made happens for the benefit of all our community, then we need to all participate in what it takes to make it a success.
Yeah, well, I gather that from what you're saying, that you would support dam removal, though.
I am not making that decision.
As an environmental benefit.
I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm not saying that I totally understand. I don't totally understand. I understand from what I've seen so far, that seems like a very likely result from what I know. But I understand that there are people who feel very strongly that it shouldn't happen. There are people who believe that there's some kind of specific thing that's going to stop that from happening. But no matter what happens, we're going to need dredging. We're going to need cooperation. And if and when the dam does go, then we really need help and cooperation and to reduce the costs. About half the cost of dredging is the administrative cost. If we can get economies of scale, we're going to reduce that amount of the cost a lot. And we can also call on the state and our other local entities, and we can work together to make it not something that just devastates folks who have their boats or who have the working port or Tom's Outboard.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
So the Port Commissioners recently voted to do an economic benefit study instead of an economic impact study. Was this the right decision? Why or why not? I don't know what I think that they just do a study on the benefits for some reason. I think the cost was an issue of doing a larger study, but it seems like it's, well, what do you think?
For me to second guess what the port already just decided, I don't think it's really a good thing for me to go and second guess them. I know that there are reasons for each approach, and I know that folks who have one particular end goal in mind would want one versus the other. But I hope that whatever study is done, that it's legitimate, based on real science from trustworthy sources who really know their stuff and don't have a vested interest, who will give the straight skinny. And benefit cost, they're so tied with each other. I think that you can get the valuable information. So I'm not going to criticize the decision they just made.
Okay. Over the years, the Port Commission has handed a lot of decision-making powers over to the executive director. How do you view the relationship between the commission and the port? Where is it most important for commissioners to make decisions?
When I was on the board and vice president for 2 years and president for a year of the Unitarian Universalist congregation here, Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation, I learned a lot about something called the Carver Model, which is related to churches, but it's important. It's a policy body. It depends on how big you are and how things are structured in your organization, which entities in that organization should do which functions. I see the Port Commission very much as having responsibility for the direction that things go. What is the future? What are our policies? What are our values? What are we trying to promote or achieve or accomplish? I see that as a very important part of the Port Commissioner's job. I also see bringing the voice of the public into this governmental entity, both for the management of its assets and the activities that it does, but also just because the public has a right to have ownership and involvement, and the elected commissioners are that mechanism. You're asking me specifically about the executive director and the port staff, but I also want to put POCAC in here and talk about those three entities and what I've seen. And besides the land and Tumwater making me think I'm a little puzzled here, I'd like to see more information about why certain things aren't happening with these relationships. I think that it's adjusting. And there have been things that have happened the way they have because of certain individuals being in certain ways in certain times. I think that who's in the job makes a big difference. We saw that in Washington, D.C. those last 4 years. It depends on how that is and what kind of ways do you structure things to make things work with these particular individuals involved. And I'm not comparing the people here to the people back there. That's not the point. But I'm just saying it really makes a difference. And so as a new commission with 2 new commissioners comes in, I think everyone is anticipating that's going to change. I do know that our current port director was hired a couple of years ago. I have nothing but respect for that individual. I think that she is very knowledgeable and tries to handle herself very professionally. She succeeds. She works really hard. I think that there is going to be evolution of those relationships and that process, and it will adjust over time related to how the individuals are. The thing that I noticed about POCAC is that it's just such a cool opportunity to have public citizen advisors. I would like to see maybe their role expanded. It's my understanding that they are limited and clearly directed, that they're supposed to be giving input on specific assigned things. I would like to have a little bit more messiness and have people coming up with ideas and bringing different suggestions and getting involved in other ways and have other kinds of personalities and diversity of ideas and not just a really proscripted way of being. The port as we got bigger in our church and as we're getting bigger as a port and as a community, oh my gosh, you guys realize that our population has increased by 40% since like what, 1980 or something. And we really are growing fast. We're getting bigger. We got to be more businesslike. We have to be more structured. We have to do things different ways. So it's evolving. And I think that it will evolve. It will hopefully improve. As a lawyer, as a process person, as a leader, I will help be part of that and part of helping it be more functional and positive.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the finances. The port currently spends $4.6 million on debt and relies on taxes to pay it off. What do you know about that debt, which is now totaling, I think, $30.3 million? Did the port commissioners make good choices when incurring these debts? How should the port pay for the projects in the future?
Oh, you're asking me if they made good decisions about these debts, incurring these debts. You know, it's real easy for us to armchair quarterback and look back and say, you shouldn't have done that. I would have tossed the ball over there. I don't think the crane, I've already talked about that. That isn't working out. It didn't work out. So I have to say that some errors have been made. I've heard from various sources that some decisions were made based on circumstances that maybe weren't really thought out and weren't necessarily economically sound decisions. I'm not in a position, it's not going to do any good for me to go and criticize somebody and say that they did things for evil reasons or that they were idiots or anything like that. I think it's my job to grow where you're planted. We have the situation. How do we deal with it? Part of economics is you have income and you have outgo. If you increase the income, then the outgo isn't such a problem and you manage it. And you also cut your losses like selling the crane. You move forward. So I see ways that we can do that. Part of my, I won't say anxiety, but my concern about the property that we have lying fallow in Tumwater that could be building up our community and building up our port. We'll get the rent. I think that could be really a great way for us to invest money. So we need to find our ways to do that and to grow out of some of our problems, grow out of some of our issues. But no, things aren't perfect. There's some difficulty. There are things that were purchased, expenditures that were made, and we're, hopefully you and me, we don't burden future generations. And the ones that we inherited, we have to deal with them.
Okay. Should the port seek out contracts with the U.S. military for cargo or other services? Have you thought about that?
I've thought about that. The U.S. military is a very big critter. I have worked for a lot of military folks in my career, because divorce lawyers in Thurston County end up with a lot of military families. I also have really good friends who are retired from the military and other friends who are in the military. So it's huge. And what it has as cargo, oh my gosh, they could have like baby beds for darling children that are ecologically sound and gorgeous, and we need to allow them to be transported through our port. It's my understanding when I went on that tour that the port only has certain specific circumscribed legal rights to control which cargoes come through. I don't know every detail about it. And I am certainly not going to say, oh, if it has the word military anywhere near it, pox on that. I'm not going to say that, because there are opportunities, and the U.S. military, Fort Lewis is right here. That's one of the ways that our deepwater port can be more appropriate for some things than Tacoma even. It could be an opportunity. It just needs to be something that is worked out in a reasonable business-like way. And I agree that we should take into consideration our community's feeling about what should and shouldn't be going through our town, our community, our safety for our area. But I can't make a specific commitment that I'll have nothing to do with the military. I don't think that's wise.
Right. So I think we're getting kind of close towards the end of our conversation, but I'd like to ask you one more question, and I'll give you some time to just give us your closing argument.
Okay.
Counselor. How do you view the port's role in, let's see, just about a second, I had it here. Oh, I'm sorry. How should the port support justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion?
That's super important in my world. And that's a big passel of wonderful things. Justice, as a lawyer and sometimes I've been a pro tem court commissioner, I think of justice as referring to the judicial system, but justice means a whole lot more than that. It means people being treated well, no matter who they are, people being treated fairly, no matter who they are. And part of my focus on our economic development being aimed at people who have less, our seniors who are very vulnerable, who are on limited incomes, and they're living in this community where our prices for housing are going sky high. The vulnerability about medical needs and what the pandemic has done to them. We have so many different needs, and that is justice. It is equity. It is inclusion. We need to not be ageist. We need to not be prejudiced against disabled people. I'm very eager for us to keep some of the benefits of people being able to participate virtually, even whenever we can just willy-nilly, freely go and be in physical events together again. I don't want people excluded because they can't physically get there. So my idea of diversity is pretty broad. It includes these kinds of folks who often aren't even mentioned. But I also very strongly feel that it's very important to have inclusion and equal treatment for people who are people of color, people who are born in another country but come here and live here. I believe that it's really important that people who have different sexual orientations or identity. I think that everyone needs to be treated with respect. Everyone needs to be, it needs to be understood that everyone matters and everyone should benefit from the economic development that is the port's primary mission. It should not be aimed only at a few people who already have enough. So I live in my life, I live diversity. I may look like I'm a very light colored person, and that's the majority of people who happen to live here, but none of us chose what race we were going to be born. And it's, you know, I happen to be female. I've been discriminated against because of it, sometimes discriminated against in favor because of it. Divorce lawyers, sometimes people want a female. They think they're going to be nicer. So I don't think people should discriminate based on these superficial characteristics. And I am in a family with people who were born in another country. I'm in a family with people who are a different race. I'm everyone in my office is from some kind of a minority group. So I live that life. I live that truth, and I believe in it very sincerely. And I believe that our port has a very important role in making sure economic development is for everybody, and in the activities that happen on port property with port personnel, all of that needs to be taken care of. And if there are issues where people are not being treated right, based on some kind of preconceived notion, based on some superficial status. I used to work for the Human Rights Commission, worked for the Department of Transportation and EEO. I'm pretty fierce about protecting people who are not being treated right on unfair bases.
Good. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we close this session?
I just want to thank you guys again. Thank you to people who are watching this on video. Thank you for caring about our community. Thank you for the great questions. John, you've done a great job. I'm sure the questions came from other people too. Thanks to the people who gave them to you. They really grilled me. But I'm just so happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of our community. I hope I can serve you well. If somebody has ideas or disagrees with me, I would love to hear about it. I want to improve. I don't want to call myself an equal opportunity thief, but I will say I'm an equal opportunity borrower of any good ideas from any place. And I'm not too proud to think about it, no matter where it comes from or how that person presents themselves and tells me something. I want to find the good ideas and incorporate them.
Great. Well, to that, I would say that on the Olympia Indivisible website, we've posted all your campaign information, your email address. So I urge our members to send any comments or concerns they have to you directly.
Great.
And they can look at, we of course reference your website and all of that. So
yeah, it's melissaforcommissioner.com.
This, yeah. And we'll post this on the website too. So thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And I want to tell everybody before we leave that tomorrow we'll be interviewing Amy Evans at 6 o'clock. So hopefully you all do your registration and tune in for that one. That should be interesting. And then a week from now, we have a double header. We've got both of the gentlemen running for the port offices on that. We'll be interviewing on that day, Jesse and Joel. So tune in for that. And thank you again, Melissa, for being with us. And is there anything from the peanut gallery out there? Anybody want to chime in now before we leave? Oh, I have a question. This comes from Carla Wolfsburg. You said that you think the public should be involved in the port decision-making in addition to POCAC, which is a selective group that does not represent the diversity of Thurston County. How will you use input by the community in your decision-making as a port commissioner?
I said I'm an equal opportunity borrower of all good ideas. How will I get those ideas that I don't think of if I don't hear from people? So I want there to be an opportunity. I don't know if POCAC itself needs to continue to be constituted and operate the way it has. Those folks have specialized knowledge. They've worked hard for our community. I'm not insulting what they do, but maybe there will be ways that people can contribute, either become a part of POCAC or another kind of POCAC, or expand it, or have some other kind of organization. That's a good idea that I may just steal. I think that we do need to have information freely flowing to the commission, and the commission needs to take those things into consideration. It doesn't mean that every single thing that anybody says to any commissioner is going to make it into the public record, but we need to have that. Another thing that needs to happen is we need to have 5 commissioners. We're over 300,000, I'm sure, in our census data, and we're going to have 5. We should have 5 county commissioners. We should have 5 port commissioners, and that's going to vastly increase our efficiency and ability to get things done, and ability to have better representation, because we just have 3 people for over 300,000 people in our county. We need more, and I think they should represent their districts. I think they should represent you.
That could be an issue that I think the port commissioners decide that, have the ability to decide that. So that may be coming up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't see any other. Just remember to sign up for the Amy Evans Town Hall. There's for the link tomorrow, and thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you all soon.
We were the guinea pigs, so hopefully the next ones will get more and more and more people, because we were so great, y'all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.